We cannot regulate an emotion we don't first allow ourselves to feel. That inner voice, it exists within all of us, but we can only hear it from a really regulated state. Learning good emotional hygiene and learning how to move this energy through is so important and so empowering. When we don't feel our emotions, when we do push them down, we have this inner turmoil and it's so uncomfortable that we need to cope with it in some way. Failure is not failure. Failure is just redirecting you to success.
What's the secret weapon behind every top CEO and entrepreneur? A game-changing executive assistant. Hermessi gives you access to elite EAs who supercharge your productivity. From payroll and admin to social media and customer support, they handle it all so you can focus on growth and big picture decisions. These aren't your average assistants. They're expertly trained, thoroughly screened, and equipped with the latest AI tools to work smarter and faster. Ready to delegate and dominate? Get 15% off your first 2 months with code INSPIRE15. Don't wait. Visit Hermessi, that's HERMESSI.webflow.io and take back your time today. What if everything you've been taught about business success is actually holding you back? Today's guest learnt this the hard way. After reaching the pinnacle of corporate success in tech, earning 7 figures, leading as an executive, she hit a wall that forced her to redefine everything. Now she's transformed the lives of hundreds of entrepreneurs and executives, helping them build multi-million-dollar careers without sacrificing their well-being. I'm Linda Ver, and today on Inspired by Success, we're joined by the founder of Conscious Success and creator of the groundbreaking Conscious Success method. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Emma Lloyd.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us your story, Emma, and what point did you realize that business success wasn't enough?
Yeah. So, I think like many high achievers, probably I grew up in a family of high achieving parents from an early age. The impression I received was that intellect was worthiness, achievement was lovability. And so from a very young age, I was a high achiever. I got straight A's in school. I graduated early magna cum laude from a top college in the States. And I, went on, joined the workforce, joined early stage tech company and just kind of hit the ground running. And by the end of my late 20s, I was making 7 figures, as you mentioned. I was relocated from San Francisco to London to run an international sales team. And by most people's accounts, I was probably the definition of success. I was checking all the boxes. But internally, it was a really different story. I was just absolutely driven by perfectionism and a fear of failure. And so if everything was going well externally, I felt good, I felt safe, I felt worthy. But if ever it felt like my team wasn't going to hit our number, anything didn't meet external expectations, that really sent me into survival state. And it wasn't until a few months before my wedding that I went to my hairdresser and she told me I'd lost a third of my hair since she'd seen me last, because I just had such chronic stress and I had hit clinical burnout. And that was really the moment, you might call it vanity from losing my hair, but I was like, okay, something really has to change. There's no way that this can be true success if it feels this shitty on the inside. And so that really led me down a journey, which I'm happy to share more about, but to just start to realize that I had to define success on my own terms. And I had to really do the mental, the somatic, and the spiritual work to really clarify what my own vision of success was, and then to really rebuild and to do the strategy and execution work necessary to redesign my career to the one that I have today, where I founded a company called Conscious Success, where I work with a lot of high achieving individuals to really do that work to redesign success on their own terms so that it can feel more fulfilling and free.
Wow, very interesting. Did you dive straight into entrepreneurship after that moment, that pivotal moment where you knew something was wrong, you lost so much hair? I've been through that type of stress before too, and it's not very nice. But did you dive straight into it and just quit the tech world and just jump straight into the entrepreneurial journey? Or was it a slow thing that you had to learn spiritually while still working and then create your own business adventure?
Yeah. So once I hit clinical burnout, I actually took 9 months leave of absence from my job. And fortunately, I had been at my company for 8 years. I had a lot of goodwill built up, and I just said, I need to take a break. My dad was actually also in hospice at the time. So there was a lot of goodwill and trust built up, and they allowed me to step away from the business. And I decided it was this ping that I got from my intuition that I should go back to school to a coaching institute, which I thought at the time would allow me to be a better leader, to be a better manager, to come back to my tech company and lead my team. What it really led to was realizing that I had such a passion for this deeper work and for really coaching and helping other individuals. And so slowly, as I did this work on myself and then became really inspired to share this more broadly, I started my own business and I decided, I looked at my finances, and fortunately I had made a lot of money in my past career. So I put aside a few $100,000 in a nest egg account and said, all right, this is going to fund my business. And if I can make it work by the time I run out of money, then that will be my new career path. And if not, I can always go back to tech. And it was one of those moments where I really had to think about this concept of one-way and two-way doors. There are some choices where once you walk through that door, there's no coming back. That choice is final. And there are two-way doors where you can make a choice, you can go through, but you can also walk it back if that choice doesn't lead to where you want to go. And I really had to realize this is just a two-way door. If I go and I start my own business and I become an entrepreneur and it doesn't work out, what's the worst that can happen? I already have this background. I already have this experience that I can come back to in tech. I'll be able to get another job should that come to pass. And really within a few months of starting my coaching business, I was fully booked and it's kind of been off to the races ever since. So I never really had to meet that end of getting to the bottom of the barrel of my savings, but it really was this choice that I made, knowing that I had that safety net, which allowed me to really pursue my desires probably for the first time.
I like it. That's very powerful and very lucky. You must have done something right to be able to get that many people fully booked within a few months too. So I'm curious to know, what type of work did you have to work on yourself first before you can apply that? Because a lot of the times when we hire coaches is because we want something that they've done and something that they've overcome or something they've achieved. So what was it that you brought to the table and how did you work on yourself in order to be able to help other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So at first, I was really focused on helping women to recover from burnout because that was something that I had just gone through. And really, what I understood and realized from doing this work on myself was that burnout really came down to three root causes. First was mindset. So the bigger the delta, the bigger the gap between who we perceive ourselves to be and who we think we should be or need to be in order to be worthy, in order to be lovable, right? The more we're shape-shifting to be someone that we're not because of the expectations that we hold for ourselves, that creates an enormous amount of stress internally. And so that was a lot of the mindset work to start to understand my subconscious programming from being in this high achieving family and having conditional love and thinking that I needed to earn and prove my worth. And how did I actually see that and see my conditioning and start to make more conscious choices? What did I believe? What were my values? What did I actually hold as worthy and lovable? So that was a lot of the mindset work and closing that delta, right? The second is somatic work, which before going to the coaching institute that I attended, I really had no idea of, I'd gone to therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy and all of that, but really that just scratched the surface of understanding what happened in our past and kind of why we are the way that we are. But somatic work is really about the nervous system. It's really about working with the body. And I understood for the first time that our nervous system, which is surveying our environment to tell us whether we're safe or in danger, is always communicating with us, but it doesn't speak in English sentences. It speaks through somatic cues, which is the language of the body. So you might recognize if you ever are feeling frightened or panicked, you might have your palms start sweating or your heart rate starts beating faster. Maybe you're starting to clench your jaw. Maybe you're jittering, right? These are all signs that your body is always giving you of the level of safety or unsafety that you feel, right? And so starting to follow those somatic cues and using that to release emotions and traumatic events that had been long stored and suppressed and repressed in my body and in many of ours, and learning how to release that in order to regulate my nervous system, in order to embody a new sense of safety. And there's a saying that we cannot regulate an emotion we don't first allow ourselves to feel. So learning to do this deep emotional release, emotional processing work to come back to an embodied sense of safety so that I felt safe in the world and safe in my true self. And I could begin to hold the life I actually desired versus the one that I thought I needed to have in order to stay safe. So that was really the somatic work. And then the last was more of this spiritual work. And what I came to learn was that when we don't do the things that light us up, when we don't do the things that we are innately gifted at, that make us come alive, that feel good, it depletes our energy over time. So we could have a really solid mindset and we could not be suffering from a lot of like past traumas or trapped emotions or any of that. We could feel safe in our body. But if we're just going through the motions and doing things in our career that don't light us up, that drain us, over time, that is also going to lead to burnout and just a lack of aliveness, this feeling of kind of just like deadness and monotony. And so learning, well, who am I? What are my innate gifts? What really lights me up? And how do I orient towards my zone of genius? And in doing so, it's like taking your car to the gas station and filling up your tank, right? All of a sudden, you can drive around easily. But if you don't do that and you don't have any gas in your tank and you're trying to push your car around on neutral, over time, that's going to lead to burnout, right? So learning how to reprogram my mindset, my expectations, my paradigms, my beliefs, learning how to move emotions through and re-regulate my nervous system for safety, and then learning what was my zone of genius, what was I naturally gifted and talented at that gave me energy, and learning to lean more into that allowed me to totally shift from feeling absolutely burnt out to a career that I truly love. So back to your question, when I started out, I really helped women through those 3 layers to shift out of burnout to create more sustainable success. Sometimes that looked like just shifting the way they were showing up in their career. You know, we do the mindset and somatic work. Maybe we make some tweaks in terms of their job roles and responsibilities, but they stay in the same career, but they feel a lot better about it. Sometimes it was starting to totally re-architect and redesign and go into another career path. And then that really led me eventually, as I built my own business that was successful, and women were coming to me more and more and saying, okay, well, now I have this clarity on my purpose and what I want. And it's not what I have. It's not what I've created. I need to create a whole new career. How do I do that? Then these pillars of really strategy and execution work came into my business. And so now I work at all 5 layers. So I do mindset, somatic, spiritual, strategy, and execution to help people shift from what I call conventional success, which is the success that we are all kind of conditioned and indoctrinated to believe is successful, into conscious success, which is success that is based on your personal definition, your personal values, your own genius, and designing a career around that. So now that's what I work primarily with women, some men, to be able to do that. And as my business and as the work I've done on myself has grown and I've embodied that, you know, I think naturally attracts people who want to do the same.
I like it. There's a few things that I want to ask about because I'm just learning about this somatic work as well. I don't know if I'm into the spiritual and the self-development, and now I've learned about somatic breath work. I don't know if that's a part of it as well, but for me, I've had a bit of a traumatic past. And so I've heard that some breath work might help. And I've just heard on another podcast, there's like this lady was talking about a Bali retreat where they do somatic 7-day breath work, and it releases all the trauma and all the blockages as well that you might not even realize. And I think that when you release all of that, it opens up, you have more in your body to just open up and allow fresh things to come into. But I wanted to know, what is the somatic work that you're talking about? Is it breath work? What is that? Is it meditation? Is it hypnotherapy? What type of somatic work do you do with your clients?
Well, I think that breath work is an amazing way to kind of bypass the thinking conscious mind, right? So that you can get to the nervous system, you can get to the trauma, you can get to what's stored underneath the surface, right? That is absolutely something that I also practice, but I am not a breathwork facilitator. The type of somatic work that I really do with my clients is, as I was starting to speak to before, really starting to connect them from head down into their bodies. Like, so many of us walk around just all our energy, all of our attention and our thoughts in our heads, but we have no awareness of what's happening from the neck down. So just beginning to do practices like a body scan, where you go from the tip top of your head slowly down your body to every part, as though you have a sensor that's like scanning your whole body, and understanding, becoming aware of what is speaking to you? What energy is alive? Where are you feeling dense and contracted and tight? What's feeling maybe energized? What are you noticing? And as we do that, and as we just start to use breath, sound, and movement to bring awareness and spaciousness to that sensation in your body and just breathe into it with presence, just that alone shifts from us trying to repress and suppress and distract and cope and stay in our thinking mind rather than feeling what we're feeling. And it opens up a door, it opens up a gateway for us to then move this stuck energy through. And oftentimes what we'll find is by just breathing into that, all of a sudden, now we feel tears. Now we feel rage that we didn't know was there. And it can be as simple as just meeting it with sound and movement. Maybe you need to make a loud, audible exhale. Maybe you need to shake your arms and legs or flutter your lips. Sometimes it's punch a pillow or, have a good cry, right? But learning how to ride the waves of emotions until they naturally crest and release. And then what you find is on the other side of that, there's this stillness, there's this peace, there's this sense of regulation where you can connect with what I call your true self, your innermost self, your spiritual self. And my belief is that that inner voice, it exists within all of us, but we can only hear it from a really regulated state generally. And so the more that we can feel and release these emotions so that we can get to the other side of the dysregulation and enter a regulated state, we can connect with that innermost self. And that self is our biggest weapon. It is pointing us true north. It's telling us the work we're meant for in this world. It's connecting us to our desires and to self-honoring aligned action. And so when we learn to connect with that, it's like we have this superpower inner guide that's showing us the next right step and the next right step. And so learning how to do that somatic work so that we can connect with the spiritual work, which then can allow us to rebuild the life and the career that we're meant for. And so the somatic work to be able to release and regulate is the precursor, I believe, to the spiritual work and then to the strategy and execution work. So does that clarify the kind of somatic work that I practice?
Yeah, it does. And when you mentioned the pillow thing too, because like people get angry and the stress, especially when entrepreneurs, there might be times where you want to scream. And a friend of mine, she said that when she's angry and she feels like she's got a lot of rage built up, she'll scream in a pillow or scream outside and release. And I think crying is a good thing too if you've got a lot of trauma, releasing that. I haven't fully done it. I know I should, but for me it's just a matter of physical, kickboxing and meditation and breath work. And I sometimes once a month or twice a month I go into the sauna and I just do breath work in there as well and just sweat it all out. So I don't know if that's a part of it, but I guess each person has their own unique way of releasing all this stress and trauma as well.
Yeah. And look, those of us who have trauma have probably more of this to release, but just being human, to be human is to feel emotions. But in our society, we are socially conditioned out of them, particularly men. And the thing is, emotions are just energy in motion. They're sensations that we feel in and on our body. Nobody gets through life not feeling emotions. That's just a fallacy, right? And so our superpower comes in allowing ourselves to just move the energy through and not making it right or wrong or good or bad. It just is. And so when we're not in resistance to that, and when we allow ourselves to just move the energy through, we become empowered, we become regulated. And if you think about a child having a temper tantrum, like when they are freaking out, what do? They scream and they cry and they throw themselves on the ground and they're just like absolutely physically overtaken by emotion, right? And they let it fully move through their body until you'll see them just, and they'll start to calm down. And then like 2 seconds later, they're happy and skipping or want a lollipop. And they're not holding on to anything that happened just moments before. But as we get socially conditioned out of feeling emotions, we just push them down and we ignore them and we turn to coping strategies because it doesn't feel safe to feel or it feels too intense to feel. But that actually cuts us off from our inner knowing. It cuts us off from our superpowers. It cuts us off from our empowerment. And so all entrepreneurs, even when things are going well, you're holding a lot. There are a lot of stressors that you're facing. And so learning good emotional hygiene and learning how to move this energy through is so, so important and so empowering, so that you're not taking it out on your partner. You're not taking it out on your team members. You're able to not bypass your emotions. You're feeling them, but you're feeling them into a pillow, right? Rather than into your team member. And it allows you to just make much better decisions and lead with much more confidence and in a much more aligned way. And so I think it's something that everyone would benefit from building a practice of.
I like that. And you mentioned gifted as well, how we find after you've released a lot of that. I mean, I guess, we're always going to experience emotions. I heard a gift that we could all have is like true power we could all have is if we could regulate our emotions, emotional regulation. So I guess that's a great thing that you mentioned. Just don't push it down like we often tend to do and not feel it. Some people just don't like to feel it.
When we don't feel our emotions, when we do push them down, we have this inner turmoil, this inner discomfort. And it's so uncomfortable to keep all of that energy down that we need to cope with it in some way. And that's where you see a lot of addiction, a lot of drinking, a lot of workaholism, a lot of being addicted to exercise, a lot of scrolling, a lot of binge watching TV, you name it, because we're trying to numb from the discomfort of our trapped emotions. And so when we want to feel inner peace, when we want to feel ease, when we want to feel connection to self, it only is really able to come when we can move that blocked energy, which feels so uncomfortable, through, so that we can settle on the other side. And then we have intentional choice. I can choose to watch Netflix at night because that is what I'm choosing to do at the end of a long day. But I'm not choosing it from an unconscious place of, I just need to numb out, right? I just need to have this
Escape.
glass of wine, or I just need to keep working because I need to escape, right? And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs also get stuck, is that they're doing so many things reactively and from a coping mechanism, and they're not actually doing them from an intentional, aligned way, right? Because they're trying to bypass the discomfort of feeling emotion. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's very powerful there too. Just say that they've done all that somatic breath work, and you mentioned after that the gifts. How do we discover that gift and what we're passionate about, and the talents are within that we don't know that we have? Because like you said, when people sometimes discover new things about themselves, do we have to go through all that in order to find out? For me, I'm passionate about doing the podcast and learning. I love learning and I love hearing stories from other entrepreneurs. And that's something that I do for, without pay if I had to, because I'm so passionate about it. But is that how you discover the gifts? Like, is it something that lights you up that you should be focusing on? Because after a while, they say like people that love to cook or bakers shouldn't bake bread too much and do it for a living. Like, if you do it for a living after a while, it doesn't become a passion. Do you know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on that? And how do we discover those gifts that we have?
Yeah. So I think the best way to discover your gifts is by becoming aware of your energy. What gives you energy and what decreases your energy. And oftentimes we think of, okay, and this was me earlier in my career, before I even started in tech, I was passionate about telling people stories, and I thought I wanted to be a television writer. And so I went into the entertainment industry and I was going to be a TV writer. But the reality was that the types of work that I was doing, I was working at a talent agency called William Morris Endeavor, and I was the assistant to an agent. And my actual job was to be able to like recite lists of writers that were appropriate for a certain project off the like drop of a hat, and I couldn't do that. And it was like all of these things that were not aligned to my passion of telling stories, right? So like the title sounded like something I was passionate about. I was in the entertainment industry and that was something that I loved. But the reality is the individual workloads were not aligned, and they actually drained my energy, and they were not leaning into my genius at all. Instead of looking at a title, you're looking at, okay, day to day and like 15 to 30 minute increments of what I spend my day doing. What is giving me energy? What's keeping my energy totally neutral or flat, and what's actually decreasing it and taking it away. And when we start to look at that, we do this kind of energy audit, you can start to find the things, the energy increases that are the things you would do for free, as you say, that you so enjoy doing that you can kind of get lost in. And I call this a flow state, right? You know, when you sit down to work at something you love and like hours can go by and you're totally absorbed. And at the end of it, you actually have more energy than you had when you sat down, right? Like that makes no sense. We think of like, oh, well, I put all this energy and I must be exhausted. No, when we're working in our zone of genius, when we're working in the things we're meant for, in our innate gifts, we are given energy. It's supposed to feel good. And we're also conditioned in our society out of the things that feel good. Like there's some shame around that. Like, oh, well, work is work. It's work for a reason. Or that like, if it feels too easeful, it must not actually be a talent or a skill. We actually oftentimes overlook our zones of genius because we think, oh, well, that must come naturally to everyone. Or because I didn't have to work hard for it, it must not be that valuable. When it's actually quite the opposite. The things that come naturally to you, the things that are easy for you that you would spend all your time doing are the things that you will consistently spend time doing. And when you consistently spend time doing things over a long enough period of time, you develop mastery. And when you develop mastery, you develop differentiation. And when you develop differentiation, you can command a higher price. And this is the virtuous cycle of conscious success, is understanding what's in your zone of genius, aligning it to that, and then being able to really create results by leaning into the things that you're naturally gifted at, that you love, and that you can create mastery in over time. So following your energy and really understanding what's in alignment is one of the key ways to be able to start to lean into that.
Nice. And just say for entrepreneur, they've gotten to where they are, where they're passionate and they're doing what they love and it lights them up as well. When they chase only revenue and growth, is that a bad thing, do you think? Because every entrepreneur likes the growth, and that how much you work decides how much you can get paid as well. So what are your thoughts on that when entrepreneurs only chasing revenue and growth, but still fulfill, like as long as it fulfills them as well, though?
Well, yeah, sure. In my model, I distinguish conventional success from conscious success along 6 vectors. And so on the mind, it's conditioned mindset to intentional mindset. On the body, it's being in a survival state to a flow state, which we just discussed. On the energy level, it depletes your energy to it actually generates energy. Motivation is you're driven by external validation versus a sense of internal fulfillment. On the alignment level, it's either you're trying to strengthen your weaknesses or you're actually trying to develop your strengths. And the last one is wealth. Either it sacrifices your values or it honors your values. And so to me, true wealth is honoring our values. And it is a beautiful thing to be beautifully compensated and make lots of money. There's no shame in that game whatsoever. But when we get to the point where we're chasing more money, and we are abandoning what we value most, whether that is the thing that we actually love doing, whether it's time with friends and family, whether it's just, whatever it is that really matters to you, your voice, your integrity, right? If we start to sacrifice that in the pursuit of more, it very quickly becomes unconscious, unfulfilling, conventional success. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves perhaps leaving the corporate life, trying to create something that feels more free and more fulfilling, but then they find themselves in this trap where they're just in this constant pursuit of more, and they're actually hustling and grinding harder than they ever did in corporate, and they're burning out and they're miserable and they don't understand why, right? And so really bringing this consciousness, this intentionality, this awareness to understanding, what do I value? What is true wealth for me? And then how do I align my career and my business in support of that? And I also think that one of the shifts, I heard you say that like something to the effect of we need to work more in order to create more results. I do also believe that when you're aligned with your genius and you're structuring and setting up your business in the right way, and you are building teams that have different zones of genius around you rather than trying to do everything yourself, and you build the right systems and support for ease, like you can actually do less, but you can do more of what you love, more of what's in your genius, and have.
Ready to revolutionize your content game? Meet Modern IQ, the AI tool that creates SEO optimized, plagiarism-free blog posts with just one click. No more writer's block or endless hours of content creation. Generate high-quality articles that boost visibility, save time, and slash marketing costs. Whether you're a startup or an established business, this tool is your content team, marketing expert, and SEO guru in one. Click on the link in the description to claim your free article and join forward-thinking entrepreneurs who are working smarter, not harder. The future of effortless marketing is here. Are you ready to dive in?
crazy results. So we get into this fallacy and this trap of thinking it needs to be me. I'm the only one. More work leads to more success. Not only are we sacrificing our own values in doing so, but it's actually not even true. And it will burn us out over time. And we are not machines. We're human beings. We need to have periods of, we can sprint. We also need periods of rest and digest, periods of ease and calm and introspection. And so when we are in the pursuit of more all the time, oftentimes we sacrifice that ability to rest and recover. And then that actually leads to worse results over time. So we see kind of diminishing returns. And so it's all trying to reprogram some of this conditioning and get, again, more conscious and more intentional so that we can create abundance. We can create wealth, but it's true wealth rather than conditioned.
I like that. And you mentioned building systems, and I think systems is super important in scaling as well. Like for me, I've built a team, and I think that's just crucial in order to do the things that I love. I wouldn't be able to do it without the systems in place as well. Mm-hmm. So what systems have you built that actually work? What other systems do you recommend to put in place to help scale a company? Like for me, personally, I have like a offshore team that do a lot of the admin task, and I figured out the things that I did that are low value and that drained my energy. And I just filmed a video on Loom. And then I said, the person that I trained, my superstar, she's my VA, I guided her with all the admin tasks, and I trained her with the videos. And so now it frees up a lot of my time to focus on the family and to expand the business as well. And I'm doing the school drop-offs for my kids and after school classes, but I've got a reliable team that helps me as well. So what are your thoughts on that and what systems have worked for you?
Totally. I mean, I think that that's so beautiful. Like things like Loom, they might take a little bit of time to like, okay, now I have to go back into my Google Analytics and I need to take a Loom of how you set this up and how you do each step, and it's already working and I don't want to do that, right? But when we take a Loom, we're buying time back because now you can train someone else, and now we can set the process and the standard operating procedures, and investing in that now is buying me so much, not only time back later, but ease and the sense of like, my business is covered. I'm supported. This is all safe, underneath the surface. And so that is a beautiful example. And I very much do the same. From the start of my business, I took a lot of time to set up my project management system, which I use Notion, and just being able to have everything in one place, from like my tasks to my projects to all of my different resources for my company and my clients, and knowing exactly where to go for every note and everything I need. Like the amount of freedom and spaciousness that creates, and the amount that I'm able to do more every day because I've set that solid foundation is just so huge. And I think that it's not sexy, and a lot of entrepreneurs skip it because they're pursuing the revenue goals. But if you're not setting up systems and support, like it's only a matter of time before you're either capped out with the success you can achieve or you burn out, right? And so I think it's just so important. And one thing I just love to do and do consistently is really, again, back to like honoring my feelings. Anything that feels sticky, anything that feels uncomfortable, anything that's giving me a sense of like, and like unease, discomfort, whatever you want to call it, being able to then look at that and be like, okay, well, how can I optimize? How can I systematize? How can I get support? How can I improve? And I've learned to build a relationship to not make myself wrong. And like, I'm feeling this way because I suck and I'm a bad entrepreneur. No, I'm feeling like this because there's something that I can grow and I can learn and I can iterate on here, right? And when we start to shift our mindset like that, then everything becomes figure outable. Everything becomes something that we can solve and make better, right? And when we move into that empowered state and way of living and being, I think that there's no limit to the success that we can achieve. And that's what I work with many of my clients to do, whether they're starting their own businesses, to ensure that we're putting that in place from the beginning, as well as constantly doing those checks to understand, great, we're in a co-creative dance with the universe. You put something out there. It's not working well. It's telling you feedback. Great. What are we learning? Are we available to listen? Are we available to iterate and to continue to move forward? And so I really deeply believe that if we listen to that and then we take the time to invest in the systems, that it is so supportive to creating conscious success.
Nice. And I think leveraging AI now is just a game changer for productivity. You can get so much more done with AI, and there's so many
Mm-hmm.
tools out there too. So there's no excuse for entrepreneurs. But then one thing is like beginner entrepreneurs mindset is something crucial. And I think a lot of people don't have that mindset, and there's a fear of failure, or they just don't want to risk, like they're comfortable, for example, and they don't want to risk. What are some strategies or advice and tips that you could recommend to help an entrepreneur if they're like thinking of starting something like a new business or a new career, but they're just, their mindset is not there, and there's a fear there as well, or they're just comfortable because sometimes, you know, they could be having a high salary, for example, and but they're miserable, but the
Mm-hmm.
salary is there. You know, it's golden handcuffs. So what are your thoughts on that? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know that mindset is crucial there. And sometimes it takes, like for me, when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just had to do it and just keep practicing. And then I've made so many mistakes in business as well, financial mistakes. And then it's just a matter of being consistent and not giving up and just pivoting if things don't work. But it took me
Mm-hmm.
years to realize that. And the mindset thing was crucial. I wanted to give up so many times. But what are your advice for
Yeah.
people with that need to shift their mindset in order to grow in their entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. So I would say to the people that are in corporate that are having those golden handcuffs, but they desire something else, but they feel really stuck. I think that one of the things that I see keeps my clients the most stuck is that they are trying to replace their income tomorrow or within 3 months' time. And if they can't do that, they're like, see, it's not possible. I've got to work for the man for the rest of my life. Right. But that's a trap because the truth is that they didn't make whatever, mid six, seven figures in their current career right out of college or high school overnight, day one. They had to develop mastery, they had to learn, and they had to grow over time. And the same is true in entrepreneurship. I like to think about entrepreneurship when you found a company, it's like having a baby. And I have 11-month-old twin girls. So I just went through this myself. But like the thought of asking my 11-month-olds to like pay rent to me right now is preposterous, right? Like we wouldn't do that. They're babies. And yet in entrepreneurship, 3 months in, we expect our business to be like generating a lot of revenue when we haven't even laid the systems or the foundation or support. So when we have that expectation, we're setting ourselves up for failure and we're setting ourselves up to really stay stuck. So instead of that, shifting to know the reality of successful businesses is not that someone has a secret that you don't know. And it's not that like it's if you were talented enough, it would happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take trial and error and iteration. And if you can stay empowered and you can stick with it and you can listen to your inner knowing and you can take consistent action over time, my belief and what I see from so many of my clients is that we land maybe not where we thought we were going to be initially, but at a version of success that is deeply successful and fulfilling. But if we have this expectation that it's going to happen instantly and then it doesn't, we stay stuck, right? So if you're in corporate, but you want to start your own company, it's instead, how do you create boundaries? How do you create space in your life to be able to take consistent action and focus on something on the side while giving it the time to go from being a newborn to a toddler to a kid? And then maybe in its teenage years, it starts to get a job after school. And then it's like, okay, it's out of the house and now it's earning money, right? Sometimes in my case, because I had this lucrative career, I was able to say, you know what? I'm betting on myself. I'm betting on this business. And again, I can always go back if it doesn't work out. Sometimes it's, hey, my spouse makes enough money to cover our basic needs, and I'm going to take this entrepreneurial bet on myself. Sometimes it's building it on the side. But I think what's really important is setting yourself up with realistic expectations and knowing that things are going to take time and it is going to be trial and error. And that is a part of the process. Failure is not failure. Failure is just redirecting you to success, right? It's telling you which path or which thing you've tried isn't working well. And it's allowing you to shift. It's allowing you to continue to iterate until you find that alignment and flow. And so really that's what I would say to the people that are having kind of that mindset keeping them stuck. It's moving from that kind of disempowered to empowered state and setting yourself up with realistic expectations so that you can build positive momentum, so that you can win rather than feeling like you're failing and quit.
Nice. And also in terms of leadership skills, I guess you've had a lot of experience in the corporate world to build your leadership skills, but now that you're in the entrepreneurial world, how have you used your leadership skills that you've learned and also build a great culture? Because it's good being an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. You're the founder, you're the leader, you're the one that is accountable for everything, and your team look up to you. So have you applied those skills in the corporate world, and how have you applied it to build a great culture with your entrepreneur journey?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I think that I learned a lot more of the skills for how to build a great culture out of the corporate world than in it. There are certainly
Mm.
examples in the corporate world of great corporate cultures, but I think a lot of it you're asked to withhold your voice and, just like go with the flow, even if it's out of integrity or the truth of your values or whatnot. And maybe people are kissing up and kicking down. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in the corporate world that isn't necessarily good leadership outside of the corporate world. And really, again, this work that we've already talked about of like doing the work to reconnect with yourself and reconnect with a sense of empowerment and worthiness. When you truly feel that way about yourself and you know that to be human is to be flawed and people make mistakes and that doesn't make them unworthy, that just makes them human. And how human of me, how human of you, like when we can stay in an empowered mindset of what's there for here for us to learn, how can we iterate, how can we make this better, how can we communicate, how can I share my needs, my boundaries, how can I make powerful requests. Like when we do that, we naturally create really trusted relationships, we empower others, we lead from the front, we create good culture, right? And so I think that absolutely as an entrepreneur, it starts with you and it starts with how do you speak to yourself? Because however you're speaking to yourself is probably coming out sideways or non-verbally, or maybe it's directly to the people on your teams and the people in your culture. So I think that doing this type of work is so important if you're an entrepreneur. It's so important if you're a leader, not just so that you can empower others, but because just like with our kids, we say they don't do what we say, they do as we do, right?
Mm,
And so the
yeah.
same thing with entrepreneurship is to really lead from the front. And that's what I found. The more work I've done on myself, the more easily I've been able to build great culture and be a good leader. And the more I'm able to meet people in their humanness so that we can remove shame and we can actually step into our power.
I like that. That's powerful. I never thought of that, how we speak to ourselves, because I didn't think of that, because that just reflects onto our team as well and how we see ourselves. And I guess worthiness is a big one too. Very interesting. There's a lot to work on there for mindset. But how do you help leaders define success beyond like the money and the titles? Because every person has their own definition of success. Mine, for example, is being able to do the 5 things in my life is like being happy and fulfilled in those 5 things. It's just health, wealth, spirituality, mindset, and family. So, it changes all the time. But for me, I
Mhm.
like to try and have a balance and be happy in all those 5 aspects. But how do you help other leaders define success beyond the money and the titles?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done the work to really think about it and define what that looks like for you on each of those 5 things. And how do those all coexist in your life in somewhat harmony with one another? And like that takes a lot of intentionality and work. And I think that as I was kind of talking about earlier, the conscious success continuum, as I call it, from the conventional definition of success to conscious success, and looking at it at the mind, body, energy, motivation, alignment, and wealth levels, and really digging in to really being able to define success on your own term. Because that's something maybe people throw around and it might even sound trite, but a lot of people don't actually know what they believe is successful or what feels successful to them. They're often unconsciously still trying to pursue an external conventional definition of success. So it really does take digging in and really doing this introspection and reflection to understand who you are, what do you value, what do you desire, and what kind of life, what kind of career are going to be supportive of that vision, the one that energizes you and feels like, pinch me, this gets to be my life, this gets to be that good. And I think a lot of people just think that that's impossible. And so they're like, like I'm not even going to spend time letting myself dream of what I would actually want because it's so far away from my reality. So I'm just going to opt for more money because at least that will numb the way that I feel inside. And so again, back to the feelings, instead of numbing and instead of coping, allowing ourselves to look at the discomfort and figure out what would be on the other side of that. What would allow us to feel better? What would that look like? What would a life look like that honored that? And then really redesigning it from that place. So it's not one journal question that you'll answer, but it's an exploration, and it's a coming home to yourself and the truth of who you are, and a relationship that you're building with, as I call it, your true self. And it's from there that we can really have that clarity of vision and desire to pursue our own definition.
You know what? Like self-worth is something that comes up when you're speaking as well. And a lot of people I know that I speak to as well don't really see the value of their self-worth. I'm guilty of it as well. They price themselves under, their self-worth is low and on a subconscious level, maybe even. So how do you help people achieve a higher level of self-worth and worthiness, because subconsciously they might not feel like they're worthy of these successes? Are there any tips or strategies to help unlock the feeling of unworthiness and help have a higher self-worthiness in order to succeed?
It's really important that oftentimes if we have low self-worth, it is going to show up in our earning potential, in our revenue. It really is, because as you just mentioned, what we deem worthy of charging our clients, what we're worth, is we attach that too often with our work, and then we're lowering our prices, or we're energetically, the exchange is very low, right? Instead of, when we grow in our self-worth, when we know what we have to offer and we really can stand in that, we can confidently command our prices, and we do the great work to deliver on that, which builds this feedback mechanism of like, okay, great, I can charge that again. I can charge more than that. It allows us to grow in our abundance and our wealth. When you ask, okay, well, what are the things that we can actually do? This is that deep work, which really I would recommend people to find a coach or to find someone who can help to reflect back to you and hold you through some of this, because it's really hard to spot our own patterns and to spot our own limiting beliefs and to spot what we believe to be capital T true, which is not in fact truth at all, right? And so when we have low self-worth, I spoke very briefly about it at the beginning, but because I was in this high achieving family where intellect was considered intelligence or worthiness, when I was 10 years old in the 5th grade, I had to take a test to get into the gifted and talented program at my school, which, like, of course, my parents thought I would get in, and my brother was gifted and talented, and I didn't test highly enough to get in. And so from age 10, I developed low self-worth. I thought, I'm not actually smart. I'm not actually intelligent. I'm not actually gifted or talented, because I took this test and objectively I didn't score highly enough. And so that led to a really low self-worth. And I thought, the only way I'm going to be lovable and worthy is by tricking everyone, by working hard enough, by being perfect enough, by hustling hard enough. So internally, I didn't feel worthy at all. But my coping strategy was to achieve, right? To be perfect. And so that was a really big disconnect. And from the outside, most people would have thought I had really high self-worth, but inside it was not the case. And so the work that I had to do was to go back to that 10-year-old little girl who, of course, was gifted and talented. Like, the fact that we even have tests like that makes me pissed today as an adult, right? To say by some like criteria on your like verbal or math skills whether a 10-year-old is gifted or talented. Like, now I can tap into healthy anger, and if my girls didn't get gifted and talented, I would be like, that is bullshit, like screw that institution, right? But I didn't have that ability back then. And so going back to these core memories, going back to these things that overwhelmed me, that were traumatic. And I define trauma as anything that is mentally, physically, or emotionally overwhelming, which exceeds our capacity to stay with the emotion and release it. Right. And so any of our traumas, anything that overwhelmed us mentally, emotionally, or physically, where we stuff it down and we push it down, but it then informs an adaptation, a strategy, a maladaptive strategy, which we then run for decades or for the rest of our life until it creates so much stress and so much disease that we're forced to address it. In my case, burnout. So back to the low self-worth, it's really starting to understand, what were these things that happened in my life? What were the stories I told myself? What were the strategies I tried on to stay safe and worthy as a result? And how do we go back, and how do we allow ourselves to feel and heal and regulate and reprogram and consciously choose what we believe? Because now I believe I am unconditionally worthy. I think I'm deeply intelligent and wise, and the worth is there, but it only could come once I was willing to go back and feel a lot of things that I had no interest in feeling when I was using achievement as a coping strategy.
Oh, that's beautiful. Are there any people in your lives that have really inspired you and made a huge impact, whether that be books or mentors or certain things?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm the kind of person when I find someone who inspires me, I like go all in and I read everything they've ever written and I listen to every podcast they've ever been on and I just like absorb. I'm a sponge, right? And then
Mm.
after a period of time, I'll be like, okay, now I need to get a new mentor, a new somebody who inspires me. And I think the way I talk to my clients about this is an expander. It's someone who expands your potential, your knowledge, what you see as possible. You learn from them by being in their presence. And that doesn't even mean like you need to sit down and have a coffee chat. But if you listen to their podcast, you can kind of start to understand the way that they see the world and you can start to expand your own vision of what's possible for you. And so those expanders and those mentors have shifted throughout my life, but I always make a point of investing in my own coaches. And wherever I see someone who feels expansive for me and they seem to be embodied, not just like talking the talk, but the way that they move, they're embodied in a way that I want to grow, then I will go be a part of their world. I'll pay for access. I will pay for coaching. And that has been like such a cheat code for me to be able to jump levels because I surround myself and I'm in rooms with people who show me what's possible and lead me to greater heights and who really inspire me. And so I think too often we can get stuck in envy and comparison and not enoughness when we're around people like that. But instead, if we choose to be like, wow, this envy I feel is showing me what I want. How can I get closer? How can I allow myself to be expanded? How can I be a sponge? How can I absorb what there is to learn here? Right. I think that that is so important. So the people are constantly kind of shifting depending on where I am in my own personal journey. But that is one of the key ways that I learn and stay inspired and stay motivated.
I like it. I do the same too. When I find somebody that I'm really interested in, lately I've been into the spirituality and there's a podcast called Know Thyself. And I'm fascinated
Mm.
by, learning more about myself so I can become a better person, a better human being for those around me and for myself as well. But it's all about learning and understanding and absorbing. Like I listen to all the podcasts, getting their books as well. So no, I truly can relate to that too. Is there any final key messages that you'd like to leave our audience with? Any key takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I think really it is all about coming home to the unquestionable inherent worthiness that you are and that you hold, and you have gifts that this world needs. You have a voice that this world needs. You have a special something that if you can move out of fear and you can move towards desire, you can move towards energy and aliveness, you can move towards the things that feel good, that is going to put you on an easeful path that will bring you to the kind of success that you actually desire. And when I say easeful, that doesn't mean that you're not taking consistent action, but it means that you are on the right path. You're doing things that can feel good, that you can continue to learn from, that you can continue to move forward, and you can continue to stay empowered until you become the person that you're here to be and share the gifts with the world that you're meant to share. And so I think that the more we can embody that belief and that we have a special genius that we're meant to share, the sooner we can stop shapeshifting to be something that we're not, the sooner we can stop trying to outrun our fear. Because when we're running away from something that we fear, we're not running to anywhere in particular. We're just trying to outrun a boogeyman. Versus when we feel safe, we can intentionally move in the direction that we desire. We can know where we want to go and we can reverse engineer what steps it would take to get there. And then we can consistently take them and cross them off the list until we become who we've always been meant to be. So yeah, if this resonates, find me on Instagram, Conscious Success Co. My website is conscioussuccessco.com. I work with a lot of both high achieving corporate and entrepreneurs. So would love to connect if any of this resonates.
Awesome. I'll leave the links in the description as well. Thank you so much for your time, Emma. It's been a pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure, Linda. I really appreciate this conversation. Thanks so much for having me.